The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Shifties, welcome back to the next episode of the Shift podcast. Debbie Petitpain back with us again because she's given us so much knowledge. I can't even stand it. Debbie, welcome back.
Thank you. So excited to be here again.
I'm so excited you're back. And you and I thought this topic was pretty profound, and it's all around the importance of staying hydrated
Yes.
and how sometimes it can be challenging in the healthcare environment to stay hydrated. So let's get started. What and why? Why do you think hydration sometimes can be challenging in a healthcare organization?
Well, I think the easiest thing is just not having the opportunity to stop and drink, or for that matter, stop and eliminate. There also, in certain settings, you're not even allowed to have beverages in particular parts. So I think that's an issue. And I do think that it's easy for people to feel like they can skimp on hydration as a health goal in the same way that they feel like they can skimp on getting adequate sleep. Like, oh, that's optional. That's an add-on. I'll do better if I can. But it really is a biological need that underpins so many of your processes that we should bump it up, I feel like, on our priority list.
I agree with that. And I see when I go to different hospitals all over the country, I see a lot of care providers, whether they're nurses, physicians, PTOT, speech, dietitian, it doesn't matter. They're walking around with all their water.
Hmm.
I personally cannot drink a lot of water
Hmm.
and it gets boring.
Yes.
Any suggestions, Debbie, from the expert?
I'm the
How can I
expert.
spruce up the water? And
Hmm.
sometimes if I drink too much water, then I feel like I don't want to eat anything.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to tackle that last comment first because it's interesting when we talk about our cues for whether or not we're dehydrated. Our body's not very sensitive between thirst cues and hunger cues. And sometimes our hunger cues are actually signs that we're dehydrated. And our body is just wanting us to consume food because there is water in food. And it can be easy to mix up those signals. And so, drinking and making sure you're adequately hydrated can actually help sometimes with people that are looking to control their appetite or manage their weight. So, that's important. And also, by the time you feel thirsty, it is actually a sign that you're mildly dehydrated already. So, you don't want to wait for that signaling, you want to stay ahead of it. I hear a lot of what you're saying about water. So I worked for a really long time with weight loss surgery patients and patients that had some form of GI surgery. And it was universal for them that they would sort of not tolerate the water very well. And two patterns that I saw that came from that work. First of all, temperature makes a really big difference. So there are some times when, you might do better with room temperature water instead of ice. So my daughters have a collection of those stainless steel tumbler cups, like you're seeing your clinicians walk around with. And they love it because the ice is still solid at the end of the day than the beginning of the day. But I can't drink cold water. So mine has to be room temperature. So, like, that product saves me a lot of money that I don't want a product like that because I don't care about the ice. So, thinking about varying your temperature. And then also to your point, adding something to it just to shift the flavor just a little bit, that can help go a long way too.
Any recommendations on what you can add other than just the watermelon or the lemon?
Hmm. So, surprisingly to a lot of people, coffee and tea can be great options as well, even if they're decaffeinated. So, if you're very sensitive to caffeine or you're working at a particular time of day where you don't want to be caffeinated, these are some of the oldest beverages consumed by humanity. They've been consumed for centuries, and they both have health promoting effects to them. Now, that is coffee and tea without a whole bunch of sugar and cream in it. So, I'm just going to say, not the thing with the whipped cream and the caramel drizzle. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. But those beverages can actually really help add toward your hydration and add a little bit of variety. And then even if you're taking something that like 100% fruit juice and over diluting it. So we talked recently about orange juice being fortified with calcium as being a great source to get that vital mineral into your body. But if you dilute it a little bit, then you're, getting more of that fluid in, but sticking to the orange juice flavor, which is delicious.
I agree. I'll drink some orange juice, but I'll put a ton of water in it because I don't
Mhm.
I'm very sensitive to caffeine, and
Hmm.
I always thought I have high blood pressure, and so I thought it was me, but then I realized that everyone has a different reaction to
They
caffeine.
do.
Can you talk a
Hmm.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so caffeine is the most widely consumed drug in the world, and there's a lot of research on it because it's interesting what we've learned and changed our mind on over time. It's funny how science makes you do that, right? So, caffeine is metabolized by particular receptors in your body, and we all have a wide variety of these receptors, which makes some of us super sensitive, where you can't even have a half a cup in the morning and still think you're going to sleep at night, or whenever you consume a soda or a tea, your heart starts to race. And then there are people who can drink it all day, every day, and it doesn't seem to affect them at all. So there is a wide variance there. What we used to think also from a hydration perspective is that consuming caffeine would dehydrate the body because when you first start taking it in, it will increase urine production a little bit, but your body quickly adapts. So we now know that there's not really a net loss of your own bodily fluids from consuming caffeine. So, what that means to you is that caffeinated beverages can add toward your overall hydration status if it's something that you consume. And then there are some groups of people that we do want to just say, do be cautious with caffeine. And those are going to be people that maybe their blood pressure's controlled, but it's because they're on medication. So it may still not be a great idea for them to consume it. And pregnant women, we do want to make sure that they're not consuming too much of that either. And then the elderly seem to be a much more sensitive to caffeinated beverages and also tend to be on a lot of medications that can just sort of interact or play a complicated role there.
And what would be some of the signs and symptoms of dehydration?
Well, we already talked about how thirst is actually a late stage one. So definitely by the time you're thirsty, and even those hunger cues, maybe rethink how your body is trying to tell you something when you start to feel hungry. The easiest thing really is the frequency with which you go to the restroom or the color of your urine. So I'm sure there's a lot of clinicians that have had to talk to patients before about, their urine, the color of the urine, all of that. If it's dark and apple juice in color, we're definitely way underhydrated. We want it more like a pale lemonade. Real easy for men to sort of do a self check every time they go to the restroom. But for women, we got to stand up and turn around. So don't be afraid to stand up and turn around and look in the potty and see, because that's an easy check as well. But you might also find more subtle um, indicators. And this is where tuning into your body and paying attention to yourself is important. So, just losing that sharpness in your mental ability to respond quickly or to complex questions is a sign of fatigue. So, your brain is giant, it's juicy, it's fully hydrated, and even just a 1% loss in hydration, you're going to feel that in your cognition first. Feeling tired, feeling sluggish. Those are also signs that you might be a little bit dehydrated. And then being snippy. We all know what hangry is. If somebody could come up with a catchy word for, angry and thirsty, it would be that.
Fangry. No,
Thrangry.
yeah. Well, if any shifties has an idea, let Debbie and I
Yeah,
know.
let us know.
That's funny. No, this is really helpful. And then two last questions. How can organizations build a culture where hydration breaks and easy access to hydration is in the culture? Because we all know culture is language, values, behaviors. And how can we build that culture as a leader?
Absolutely. I can speak mostly to the behavior part of it, and just sort of that built environment is important. So making sure that we're supporting one another to take the breaks that they need for their own biological needs is really important. It could be, I think you need to go to the back room and take 3 deep breaths because you seem really stressed, but it could also be, hey, do you need a minute to just take care of anything? Can I cover something for you so you can walk away? You don't have to get into their business about what they're going to do, but supporting one another just to have a few minutes here and there because we all know about ins and outs and we can push the ins, but if you don't have a way to go, relieve yourself, that's going to make for a really difficult day. And then the second thing, of course, is just as you mentioned, access to adequate places to get to beverages. So COVID shut down water fountains everywhere, right? And there's a lot of places that have been very slow to set up water stations. So making sure that you have those, or you have a retail space where you can purchase things, or you've got a space in your unit or your work area where you're allowed to have beverages that you're bringing from home. My first career, I worked in a chemistry lab. We were not allowed to have beverages anywhere near our workspace. And so making sure that you do have access, of course, is critical.
What I've seen in all my journeys all over hospitals all over the country, some places have hydration stations.
Hmm.
You just have to be really careful where you locate the hydration station because of Joint
Hmm.
Commission and to your point, if you work in a chemistry lab. But that's one strategy. The other strategy is bringing those big Stanley cups all over the
Yep.
place. And I'm
Hmm.
seeing more and more people do that. Um, any other myths that we need to bust as it relates to hydration? You shared one about caffeine. I'm one of those people that I thought caffeine dehydrated you.
Yeah, we used to think that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's come a long way. And I think another myth is that water is the only thing that will hydrate you. And that's not necessarily true. It is true that if we were to talk about beverages that dehydrate, alcohol would be a dehydrator. So, particularly if on your time off you're consuming alcohol, you may even be starting your day extra behind. You're going to wake up a little bit dehydrated because just through expiration in the night, with every exhale, you're losing some of your fluid. So you're starting behind the eight ball if you consume some alcohol the night before. That is going to, put you a little bit behind. So when you're out and about, double fisting it with a non-alcoholic hydrating drink so that you can kind of stay on top of that would help you, get out of bed and start with your best foot forward the next day.
That's really, really helpful. Debbie, I can't thank you enough for all of your insight this whole entire month of March. I appreciate your knowledge and appreciate your friendship, of course. Any last words?
This has been super fun. If you are looking for other tips or tricks on hydration, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics does have a lot of information out there for consumers. Eatright.org is the website, or pull on your colleague that's the nutrition professional working alongside you and pick his or her brain for ideas too.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. And Shifties, I hope this has been really helpful information for y'all. Shifties, remember, your shift makes the difference. Keep shifting. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify The Shift today.